Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 14 of the Sport podcast. Just to let you know, we have got a very special guest today. Our last episode featured Sam Kane, our Community Sports Development Officer. Today we have Olympian and Commonwealth Games medalist shooter, Tim Kneale. Welcome, Tim. How are you?
Hi, Trevor. Yeah, no, well, good, thank you. Just working away here in the southwest of England now, where I kind of live. I guess I haven't picked the gun up since the last Commonwealth Games. I don't think that's the last time I shot a competitive target. Thanks for having us on.
No, it's brilliant, mate. It's brilliant to have you on, and to have a Manx lad who's gone out there and been really successful in sport to come and share your story with us is going to be a real treat for the listeners. So thank you. I'm thinking about where to start, Tim. Should we start at the beginning? How did you sort of get into shooting and sport?
I grew up on a farm in the north of the island at Jerby East, where mum and dad bought a farm or got a hefty mortgage when they got married in their early 20s, and then me and my brother came along, and dad has always shot at home, and we kind of grew up kind of doing a bit of pest control and game shooting at home, kind of for the pot, I suppose. And then the local playground at Blue Point was 10 minutes away. And I used to go and work there at weekends, sort of hand trapping when they had competition. So help set up the events and then operating the manual traps, and kind of progressed to having to go myself. And then I was quite good and kind of, did quite well for my age at a few events. And got into the Isle of Man team at 16 and shot for a home international. Not very well, because it's kind of a bigger pond when you come from the Isle of Man to then go and compete in the UK, which was in Northern Ireland, which was a good event. And then I think at 16, you can drive, and I suppose I was playing a lot of rugby as well, and kind of beer and rugby took over for a little while. Would probably be a fair way of putting it. And then I think it was about 18, and I hadn't really shot a lot of competitive targets. Between 16 and 18, I'd kind of roll out of bed on a Sunday and maybe go and have a go, depending how much money I had still in my pocket, to be honest, after a Saturday playing rugby and then having a few beers afterwards. So it was quite relaxed early on, I guess, in my my kind of shooting career. And then at 18, I broke my leg playing rugby.
Nice.
And that kind of, knocked that on the head pretty much, really. And then there's a couple of guys, Neil Parsons and Jake Keeling, were trying to get to the Commonwealth Games at Manchester at the time. So the 2002 Games, I think that would have been. Or 2004.
Where was that one, Tim?
At Manchester. Yeah. So I was going away with those guys to the mainland. So I took a year off between finishing A levels and going to university, and worked and kind of travelled with those guys to try and get some scores to go to the Commonwealth Games. And I never quite made the score for the Com Games, but I shot a junior qualifying score for the Great Britain team, and then got into the GB team, went to the World Championships in Finland that year, and we won a team bronze. And then that was kind of the start of my shooting career, I guess. So I kind of never really planned to, never thought I'd want to go to the Olympic Games, or never seen anyone on TV and thought that's what I want to do. It just, I just enjoyed doing it, and I kind of really fell in love with the sport and the discipline, and enjoyed the challenge. I guess the technical challenge and the kind of control element of it, because it's very different to go from a team sport, which I'd played, football for Ayr United, I'd played cricket for Grasshoppers and the Isle of Man, and played every sport I could at school. So, athletics, basketball, football. Never very good at swimming, but everything else that I could get involved with, I was kind of, really, really got involved and loved the sport, and captained the school rugby team pretty much all the way through school, and captained the Isle of Man under-18s rugby team as well.
Fantastic. So
yeah.
how did you find that transition from the sort of from the team sports into the individual? Because obviously there's a lot of socialisation, isn't there, with the team sports, and you sort of you have to be a little bit more happy in your own company, I suppose, to a degree when you practice them for the individual sports.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was very different, and there's some quite lonely times when you're out there training and trying to work on things on your own. But I guess you find, you just have a smaller team, so you just have a very close knit team, and I think when you start competing at a level where you're competing, internationally, you become very focused on what you want to achieve and and work on those things. So. I guess when you kind of compete in a team on the Isle of Man, it's a little, it's a different level, isn't it? You still want to do really well, but if you don't do so well, it's very different to going and competing for Great Britain or getting into the Great Britain team compared to getting into, the Ramsey first team at rugby, say, which is no disrespect because it's still a massive, a massive achievement for a lot of people, and I really loved playing for the Ramsey first team at rugby, and some of my fond memories of playing sport on the Isle of Man would have been down the Moorick, running around with those guys as well. But I guess the transition going to, like I say, an individual sport, you kind of have to put it into perspective in terms of what you're potentially trying to achieve, I guess, and it kind of refocuses the mind on what's kind of important and what isn't.
Yeah. But what sort of stage did you sort of think, because you mentioned you got into the sport, you were just enjoying shooting, and it obviously took you to a very high level. What point in that period did you sort of think, I could go to the Olympics here? I could really take this to the highest level.
I suppose it wasn't until after the Delhi Games, so 2000 so when I left university, I went on to the World Class Funding Programme for 2 years, and at the time the performance director kind of had the approach to spread the kind of the big pot of money we had. So shooting had won 2 medals at the Sydney Games in 2000, so they had a big pot of money, and the performance director spread it quite far and wide. So there was about 55 of us, I think, on the funding programme at various levels. And then after the Beijing Games in 2008, nobody won a medal and all the funding got cut. So the 2007 year and 8 year that I was on the programme, I was training and obviously didn't get to the Olympic Games. And the guys that went didn't do as well as obviously the country wanted them to, or UK sport expected them to. Funding got cut, and basically 50 people got booted off, and I think 3 stayed on. So I kind of decided I would go to Australia for the year. So I went out to Australia, took my gun with me, which I hadn't really planned to. It was a bit of a last minute chase around to get my gun shipped out when I was in Australia and pick it up out there. And I worked for a company for about, I think, 6 or 7 months and travelled for 4 or 5 months as well. And shot the Australian competitions, their kind of national selection shoots, where I finished top of their Australian rankings, much to their disgust and annoyance. And yeah, on the quiet, the Australian performance director asked me if I wanted to shoot for Australia and stay out there. And I, turned him down because next year was a Commonwealth year, and I thought I was good enough to go to the Olympics, and I wanted to compete for Great Britain, not Australia. So I guess that was kind of the point, 2009 going into 2010, and then went to the Commonwealth Games in India and won a bronze medal. And I think I was 1 or 2 in the country at the time, and everything was looking quite well to win a quota place running up to 2012. And then 2011, the year just didn't go as planned really, and I didn't perform at the events that I needed to, and didn't make the team, didn't get shortlisted for the team, and kind of thought, well, that's it really. I've had enough, because that was a real kick in the guts for me.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was living in a static caravan on a shooting ground, working for a decent company nearby. I started quite a good job that I'd got with a consultancy firm in Newmarket, and was trying to train at weekends and evenings still, and doing the best I could, and kind of decided, well, I need to, get on with the rest of my life, I suppose, and then went and got a job in the southwest of Scotland with an agricultural consultancy there, so more kind of practical on-farm stuff, which I was kind of enjoyed and looked forward to, really. So that was it. I kind of like put the gun away and said, well, that's it. I get on with the rest of my life now.
So what pulled you back?
Well, we had so the event changed. So in the time I've been shooting, I think we've shot double trap in 4 different formats, and the event changed, and some of the guys got in touch and said, this is actually quite good. It's everyone's on a level playing field again, because we're all starting from scratch, and you might as well come back and have a go. And I did. I come back in the first selection shoot. I think I came second on both days, second or third anyway. I kind of got back in the team, and I guess running up to to the 2012 kind of cut-off date, every event that I'd gone to, I'd always been at the same kind of level internationally. I'd always been in that kind of 20 to 30 bracket, I suppose, shooting 130 to 135 targets, and I'd done that for a long time. And when this new event came in, we went to the first international event, and I think I shot about the same, and finished again at that kind of 20 to 30 kind of mark in the field. And I just thought, well, something's got to change. I've kind of committed again to having another go at this, to try and get to another Olympic Games, and I'm kind of still churning out the same kind of rubbish in my mind.
Right.
It was the same average results, and I thought, if I'm going to do it, I really need to do something very different to what I'm currently doing now. And I'd always been quite, I suppose, analytical and thinking about what I did and how I performed and how I compared to other people, and what I was doing that was different to others. And kind of when I looked at it, I would go and I would train, and I'd do the same kind of stuff over and over again on the range, which was very, very technical. But actually, when you kind of think about the sport of replicating a closed skill over and over again, yes, it is very technical, but 90% of it is probably mental. And we've done a lot of sort of sports psychology stuff in the past, and tried to make our own way with myself and my coach, Martin Barker. And we kind of dabbled in bits and pieces and listened to what other coaches and other athletes had said. I think running up to the Delhi Games in 2010, or following the Melbourne Games in 2006, we'd spoken to a Scottish sports psychologist there, Amanda Martindale, and I'd done some work with her following that Games, and then we kind of lost touch and kind of drifted apart a bit. I guess as kind of relationships do sometimes, because she was a lecturer at University of Edinburgh, and she was busy, and and I couldn't sometimes get hold of her, so you kind of like you kind of stop chasing a little bit if you don't get a response. And I kind of got back in touch with her, and and I kind of said, I'm really keen to get to the next Olympic Games, but I need to do something really different. This is what I'm currently doing. What do you think? And she kind of brought a different kind of way of thinking about the kind of mental side of the sport, I suppose. And that's kind of where it all started to kind of come into place, I suppose, by changing totally my focus on how I approach the sport and the whole competition, I suppose.
So what is it about that with sports psychology? What sort of skills are involved in terms of helping you to develop your shooting?
I guess it's applying the certain practices that fit your personality, I suppose. I guess that's kind of half the skill that they have, or the way that they can like deliver their kind of way that you should do it, I suppose. So it's maybe not just about fitting the different techniques to your mentality, but also how they come across. Because you talk to some people and you might think, well, that doesn't sound like rubbish, doesn't it? Or you don't have that trust or that belief in what they're telling you. And I suppose when you have to kind of build that relationship, I suppose. And I guess I had it with Amanda previously, and we kind of Martin and myself had spoken a lot about it, and thought a lot of her as well. So yeah, I mean, I guess some of it's a lot of the things that you do in sports psychology. It's almost like it's obvious, but until someone tells you, which I guess is a lot of the same about, maybe jobs and day-to-day life. A lot of stuff is obvious, but until someone kind of tells you those things, you think, yeah, why didn't I think of that? It seems so simple once someone else has said it. But yeah, it sometimes takes someone else to kind of, I suppose, put the pieces together and then let you kind of draw the line, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's more and more. If you ask people, how much of a percentage would you put on psychology for the importance in a performance, and they usually put quite a high percentage on it. Yet they tend not to spend a lot of time practicing those psychological skills, and like you say, more often than not revert back to the technical and the tactical.
Yeah.
So, I think it's more in vogue now, and I think it's becoming much more popular amongst sportsmen and women to really embrace it.
Well, I think it is, the level of competition is getting that much higher. You've got to have, more tools in your box. You've got to be doing everything really well. And I think a lot of the psychology skills you can do at home. It doesn't cost you anything to do a lot of them. And that was the big thing that I found, that, at the time before I got back onto the world class funding program, I did sports psychology, every day. So I could do that 7 days a week and do my job. And I was then going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week as well, and doing all my planning and preparation all around a full-time job on the side of it, and then, I mean, I did live on my own, and I just literally went to work and I went to the gym and trained at weekends. So yeah, it was quite a lonely time, but at the same time, it was quite enjoyable as well, So yeah.
Absolutely. So thinking about obviously that period of time, you've moved on, you've realised that you've got a chance of taking this to the highest level. When did you sort of actualise that? What was the sort of best performance that you can recall, that sort of where it all really clicked for you?
Well, I guess the first point that kind of set the kind of ball in motion, I suppose, was shooting the world record. So, after doing the new kind of mental techniques with Amanda, the first event I went to in Munich in 2014, that would have been, I shot 148 out of 150 targets. So that kind of really set things in motion, but at the same time, it still doesn't feel quite real almost. It's still, still one of those events that just seem to happen. And at the end of it, you're like, well, how did that happen? And then it took a little while to kind of piece everything back together again to get, back into a position where you could replicate that almost on call, and then that was the back end of 2015. So that was when it was, really chasing for quota places. And the last chance was the World Championships at Leonardo in Italy. And I think I'd finished top in qualification with a 143, and then finished second in the final as well. So to win an individual silver, we won team gold, and to win the quota place. I mean, that was a fantastic result as well, and to have my coach there as well was great to have Martin there too. So that was probably one of the best performances that I like to remember.
So how important is, you mentioned Martin there, your coach, how important is that relationship with your coach in terms of helping your performance?
Yeah, I mean, that was massive, really. I mean, we discuss all sorts of things, and I mean, it wasn't just shooting. I mean, a lot of personal stuff as well. We'd often sit down and just talk about life in general, and almost offload bits and pieces, and let's say being away from family and friends, and kind of, I mean, I would have spent more time with him than anybody else in kind of that 10 years, if you like. So yeah, it was really important to have that good relationship, and he was, a fantastic person, to be honest. I mean, he's seen a lot of, I suppose, things in me that I didn't see, and kind of, helped get them out through encouragement. And he did that with a lot of people, not just me. So yeah, that was great, really. I mean, he was that good. I mean, they put me up for 6 months after university as well. I stopped with them, and then they were good enough to kind of find me some accommodation at the shooting ground as well when I needed to be there, and you kind of helped a lot. So yeah, I think
it's opportunities like that. It's opportunities like that can really help you develop, isn't it? I mean, living in that environment with a coach must be quite immersive as well in terms of your shooting.
Yeah. I mean, everything we spoke about really all started with shooting and what was going on and who was doing what and how we could, get better. And yeah, it was. I say I had a full-time job for most of that 10 years, but pretty much everything outside of that was based around shooting and how to get better and performance analysis and self-analysis, and it was tracking and monitoring and taking note of all sorts. But I think I'd probably done it very differently going back now, because you kind of know the things that matter, which I guess is the same with a lot of people, isn't it?
I'm sorry, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So thinking on, obviously you were doing all that with a full-time job, which must have been quite a challenge. So how did you find taking it from being effectively a part-time athlete to full-time athlete and dropping work off and just focusing on the shooting?
Well, I guess I had a bit of a transition. So when I shot the world record, I got allocated sort of bottom level UK sport funding, if you like. So which was £500 kind of cash in the bank, and then expenses were covered. So training and travel expenses were covered. So I actually moved to Somerset from southwest Scotland to be closer to the shooting grounds, and my girlfriend at the time, girlfriend now still, is in Somerset. So yeah, I came down here, and then I worked part-time. So I worked a couple of days a week on a farm, and then trained 2 or 3 days a week as well. So kind of that transition wasn't as clear cut as just straight to the training ground or straight onto the shooting range. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a staged transition, I guess, which was still a bit of a job in itself, because obviously £500 a month isn't a great deal to kind of pay your rent and your bills and still have some kind of social life as well. So yeah, I guess. Yeah, so I guess that was kind of a bit of a juggle act to do that, and then luckily enough, the farmer I was working for was quite flexible. So if I had an event away, I could do that or juggle my days around. It wasn't too big a deal for him, which was quite handy. And then after getting the World Championship medal, that put me on better money, and they kind of said now you're on better funding, then we expect you to be training full time and working towards trying to win an Olympic medal, basically. So that kind of, I suppose, was a smoother or an easier transition into that kind of situation. And then once full time, I think I was on the range 3 or 4 days a week, and the rest of the time was kind of either in the gym or planning or reviewing or doing anything I could really to try and get myself in a better position. So.
Did you find that helps your performances to be able to immerse yourself in shooting and drop off the jobs and be full-time athlete?
Yeah, I did. I think it was because we had a reasonable short time to focus on things that needed to be improved, and a lot of the 2016 season leading up to the Olympics was about kind of pressure testing the system. So we had lots of things that we were working on to make sure that everything was in the right place, and I could cope with more mental pressure and stress leading up to the Olympics, which is what we were expecting to happen, I suppose. So there was a plan in place leading up to that, which was quite detailed, because I kind of like to have things planned out and quite a bit of detail and targets and goals that I should be achieving. So in terms of that point of view, it was good to have all that laid out, and it was a good time to have those things to focus on. But I think probably a bit difficult the following year, if you see what I mean, or the couple of years after that, to try and fill that time if you got to a certain level. If you understand what I'm saying, Trevor, because once your technique is so good and then you've got the mental technique and processes in place, it's kind of how do you maintain that then? You know, because you're not working on new stuff, you're maybe just making fine tweaks and then trying to fill your time with just doing minor adjustments. I guess it would be a bit more difficult, but
yeah. Imagine you can probably put too much pressure on yourself by doing too much as well.
Yeah,
you can easily overcook it as well with all that with the mental pressure as much as anything else.
Yeah, you can do, and kind of, you know, the sports psychologist with British shooting was with me most days as well, because he was the one. Well, we were building different scenarios to pressure test situations, and his job, you know, was basically to needle me as much as he felt I needed. And you know, there was a couple of times where, you know, I just had to walk away and have a deep breath and remember that he's just doing it because that's his job. You know, he wasn't just being a complete knob on purpose. It was it was part of the plan, and we had that conversation that beforehand. You know, he said that, you know, I am basically going to try and wind you up to get a reaction, because that is what, you know, might happen at the Olympic Games, and you have to be able to deal with it. And we had different things. So one of the big parts of I suppose that the training was to deal with mental distractions. So he would kind of come and say different things to me while I was shooting, or we'd have a recording of these phrases. So quite often, you know, you'd sort of pop in your head like, oh, you know, why'd you miss that one, or he's missed it, or that was rubbish, or that was really good. And it was almost like affecting your emotional state as I was going through a competition, which I could recognise, but then sometimes you wouldn't recognise it and you'd get drawn too far. So we practiced that a lot of having those kind of comments coming in and then recognising when it was happening and then how to readjust and reassess. You know, following that. So yeah, some of those comments got quite tasty, but yeah.
Oh, crikey, does it get a bit personal, does it? Well, it's like there's a lot of coaches do that, don't they? I mean, if you've got to prepare the athlete for the stresses of the sport, and as well as the physical and tactical stresses, there's a lot of mental stresses, and anything can happen, can't it, on the day? And there's obviously the story about Michael Phelps, isn't there, with his coach stepping on his goggles, so he had to swim with leaky goggles, and it turned out it actually sort of happened in an event for him. Yeah. So he was ready for that eventuality, and he could deal with it. So did you find that those things really helped you in your performance and having strategies to sort of cope with them?
Yeah, so we put a lot of coping strategies in place. So we kind of, you know, we'd go through and list everything that could go wrong, and then we had a plan in place for that. So even to the fact of, you know, the gun malfunctioning or forgetting kit, or, you know, picking up the wrong cartridges. You know, we tried to cover as many bases as possible, which I guess is like Michael Phelps' coach, isn't it? He's putting them in that situation. But I guess he did that without Phelps knowing, maybe, whereas we actually sat down and went through all those things and had a discussion. So I was kind of aware of, you know, okay, what might happen, what's going to affect me more, what is going to have the biggest impact. And that was the same with having those kind of phrases that Paul would introduce as well. You know, we had that conversation, so it wasn't a surprise. And I just thought, well, this guy's just being an absolute tool. You know, we had a plan in place that's what was going to happen. And also, if it got too much, you know, it was, you know, I was to tell him that, and we did. We had quite an open relationship, and I think that was kind of almost a key part in my maybe approach to the sport and maturity, maybe, that I would be a lot more open with these people around me, whereas it's quite easy to listen to what a coach has to say and just think, well, he just said it, so I need to do it. But actually challenging them, you know, making them work. And I kind of took the approach that, you know, they're getting paid a lot of money to be there to help me do my best, so I was going to make them earn it. And, you know, I was going to challenge them and put them on the spot and make them think about, you know, because if they didn't do their best, I wasn't going to do my best. Yeah. So it was, you know, it wasn't harsh. You know, I built some very good relationships with those guys, because we had those open discussions, and I think that made us almost a bit closer. which helps when you get to, you know, a foreign country and a high pressure situation, you know, like any international event.
What did you think to something I read around coach relationships, coach-athlete relationships can go through different stages? I suppose when you're first entering into a new activity or something like that, you're very sort of dependent on the coach, feeding you a lot of information, telling you the stuff that you need to know and giving you a lot of guidance. And as you progress through there, you can hit a stage where perhaps you might think you know everything you need to know and you're quite independent and you're sort of doing your own thing. But a lot of the best sort of coaching relationships seem to be where there's interdependence, where there's sort of ebb and flow of information coming back and forth from athlete to coach and from coach to athlete. As you just said there, challenging each other. And that seems to bring out the best in a lot of the world-class performers.
Yeah, and I think like the coaches that I had, I mean, you know, my knowledge of how to shoot double trap and Martin's grew together, you know, because it was quite a new sport and he was kind of new to the event, but was very keen to understand and to help me do better. And also, you know, I think Paul and Kevin as well, Kevin Gill was the Team GB coach, who had won double trap medals in the past, but when the event first arrived, you know, it wasn't really a specialist event. People shot Olympic trap and then went and had a go at shooting double trap because they were there. You know, and we kind of, you know, we didn't have an argument one day, but we had a discussion about that, and Kevin said, well, you know, I shot double trap, I know how to shoot double trap. And I had to say, no, Kevin, you were a specialised trap shooter that shot double trap because it was on. And, you know, fair enough to him. You know, a week or so later, he come back and said, yeah, you know, you're right. You know, I wasn't a specialist double trap shooter. You know, I just shot it like everyone else did. And you know, we won medals because everyone was on a level playing field. And, you know, it completely changed from one day to the next who did any good. But yeah, having the confidence to kind of like, you know, stand up to the national coach is maybe, you know, a bit daunting at times. And I guess until you're in a position where it's difficult because, you know, they needed me as much as I needed them, because, you know, if I didn't perform, they weren't going to stay in jobs and things like that, were they? Yeah. So obviously no one was going to kick off or go mental at me for having a different attitude or challenging the way they thought. Which is, you know, it's a great position to be in because they're focused on you trying to do as best as you can. Whereas I suppose not every coach throughout that development process has got that outlook about things.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to hear that. It's great that you're able to have those relationships and be able to challenge people as well. As I say, sometimes, and like you say, it's trust as well, and sometimes it's the fear that if you do challenge, it'll be looked upon negatively and might affect your sort of selections and support and things like that. So it's important that you can have that trusting relationship with people to be open.
Yeah, and I mean that had happened in the past with me, I suppose. You know, previously the head shooting coach, we didn't get on, we didn't see eye to eye, and you know, he had a different outlook on how the event should be shot than me, and you know, subsequently the rest of the world changed to a different way of shooting it, and I was kind of keen to adapt that earlier, and he was very against it, and we were at loggerheads, and it probably held back my development. You know, I wasn't put in teams, and I'm sure that was because we didn't get on, even though I'd proved results. I mean, one situation, I went out and shot in an experienced position at a World Cup event, so you can shoot in the team or you shoot as a kind of experience slot. So you shoot in the main event, but your scores don't count. So it's not the same, but you kind of get the experience, and you have to go and obviously show your performance on the international stage still. So it does still matter quite a lot, and you're in that environment. So I went out and equaled the world record at the time, but shooting in this experience position. And that was when I came back from Australia. I did that, and then that wasn't good enough to put me in the British team.
Crikey, to equal the world record.
and some of the guys that were with me shooting at the time, I mean, they were like ready to pack up because they were like, well, what have I got to do to get in the team? You know, yeah. Tim's just gone and shot equaled the world record, and that's still not good enough. So I had to go and shoot off with one of the other guys in the British team, to actually get my spot back in the team, which I did go and win. And then I think I was I can't think it was the World Championships. I think it was in Germany, and I think I was 1 or 2 targets off making the final, which was the best result out of the British team that went that year as well. So I kind of proved my position, but the fact I had to go and do that and not only equal the world record, but then follow on and then win a GB selection shoot as well. It was kind of stacked against me for a little while there, and that's probably part of the reason why I went to Scotland and thought I'd had enough, because the system was not really helping me develop, I guess. So
in terms of like setbacks along the way, there's probably lots of bumps in the road for athletes. What have been some of your biggest bumps that you've had to deal with?
Biggest bumps, I suppose, from a competition point of view, there's been some massive setbacks and results that are difficult to get over, because you kind of think you're going to do well and then you don't perform. And I think a lot of that, I probably took it all a bit too personally at the time, was actually if you were a bit more, I suppose, less emotive about it, actually kind of sat down and focused a bit more on the processes rather than the outcomes, I probably would have, developed a lot quicker, I think. So I think that was probably quite tough, not doing as well as you expect, but then not really knowing what to do at the time, because you're kind of still trying to learn and understand what it was that kind of worked to I suppose allow those performances to happen. So I guess that's kind of one on a fairly regular basis, I suppose, early on, that you don't get the results and you get a bit annoyed and fed up, but then you just have to get your head down and get back to work and try and then do better the next time, don't you? I suppose other setbacks, I don't know really about what you'd call setbacks.
So one I was thinking, Tim, was double track being taken off the programme. I suppose that would have been a bit of a challenging scenario for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose, so like I said, for everyone else that's listening, after the Rio Olympics, double track got taken off the Olympic programme, and got replaced with a mixed team event for Olympic trap, which was great, because there was more females now competing in the sport, and it was just unfortunate my event got the chop, really. So that was quite frustrating. I mean, I guess my heart wasn't really in it after the Olympic Games, to be honest. Martin died, pretty soon after I competed at Rio, so that was a massive blow for me. So I guess it was a bit of a struggle to kind of get motivated again to go and shoot trap. I mean, I had a pretty good go at it. I was 2 targets off the score that British Shooting wanted me to shoot. So within, I think, 10 months, I think I shot 116 out of 125, and they wanted me to shoot 118. So a bit unfortunate I didn't carry it on, I suppose, and that was a massive blow. But then that basically ended my shooting career, I suppose. I think that was the back end of 2017, I suppose. And then it was a bit of a struggle to get, I suppose, geared up again for the Commonwealth Games at the Gold Coast. And there was times there where I didn't enjoy training. There's times I sat down and Martin's son Ed, he actually came out as our coach, because I was quite close with Ed, and he'd be in his mid-20s, I suppose, and we kind of spent a lot of time together on the shooting ground and things, and everything that I'd been doing running up to the Olympic Games. I was always conscious to kind of involve Ed a little bit, because he was kind of starting to do coaching, and I thought it would be a benefit to him to understand the stuff that we were doing and what was going through my head. So we kind of did have a lot of open conversations, and Ed was always kind of thereabouts. So it was good that he came out to to Brisbane with us, and definitely was a big benefit to me winning that silver medal. But we sat down at times and ummed and ahed about whether I really wanted to go to the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
To be honest, because I wasn't really enjoying it. It was a big struggle to get motivated again to do it. But I'm glad that I did. It was great to come back with a medal for the Isle of Man and to go out, with a bit of a blaze of glory, I suppose.
Fantastic to see, mate, and the whole island was absolutely behind you there, and it was brilliant, and so well done on that, and to come back and perform, as you say, when your head's been going through the places it's been after the years before, it must have been really difficult indeed.
Yeah, it was, and I guess it's a bit frustrating that double trap went, I suppose, because knowing that the skills I'd learned up until the Olympic Games, I was kind of top line number 2 in the world there at one point. So to be at that level and then have the event gone, I felt like I just kind of got to grips with being able to perform at that level. So I kind of felt like this was really the start of my international career at that high level, really. So to have it removed was a bit of a blow, but at the same time, I felt like I'd achieved a great deal, and can't be too unhappy with what I've got, I suppose. And then like I say, great to be able to go out to Brisbane as well and come back with something. And at the time, I know we'd spoke about it. Some of the things that we talked about out there. I know when Charlotte Atkinson came fourth in a favourite race, I think there was a huge amount of pressure put on her by just the situation out there, which was a bit unfair, really. But as soon as that happened, me and Ed had the conversation that basically, it's almost not as if the Isle Man's relying on me, but I felt like I was possibly the best chance of winning a medal, I suppose, being to the Olympic Games and being a world record holder. So yeah, it's difficult to, I suppose, process those things, but you've got to have those conversations with people, haven't you? And I guess that's having that coach athlete relationship and being aware of the situation that's out there, because could have quite easily just sat and said to myself, okay, I feel a great expectation now to deliver, because the other person that was probably expected to deliver hasn't managed to do it. So
how did you feel for Charlotte? I mean, there must have been a great deal of empathy after her performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was. It's difficult because I kind of felt it was almost a bit the same as when I first went to the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. I'd kind of been brought onto the Sports Aid Academy, and Britannia International had been part of that at the time, and they'd kind of sponsored me a new gun, and at the time it was me and Cav that was expected to kind of go out and lead the team and do well, and this, that, and the other. So there was a great deal of expectation, and I guess at the time you don't know how to manage expectations, maybe. And yeah, I kind of blew up at the event, I suppose, and didn't do as well as what I was expecting to do, because you kind of listen to what everyone else is expecting you to do. But fortunately enough, Cav come in with the goods, and it was a great event, and fantastic to be there when he did that as well. I can remember our shooting team manager getting his head shaved as part of a bet, and Dave Walton and Trevor Boyles winning the team medal as well at the event in shooting, which was great. But yeah, I kind of seen a bit of similarities there, I suppose, maybe that the media hypes things up, and then it's a lot of expectation on athletes, which again is where the psychology skills come into play. Learning how to deal with those expectations and not putting too much pressure on yourself. I mean, I'm not saying that's what Charlotte did. I've not spoken to her since, but yeah, I think there was probably more expectation than she probably needed placed on her a little bit.
I mean, from a home perspective, regardless where an athlete comes, if they're going out there and putting the Isle of Man on the world stage and doing their best, which everyone has done, you can't ask for any more from people.
No, that's it. I mean, everyone's got their own personal expectations and wants to do as best as they can. But it just is what it is. But yeah, like I say, that was my kind of take on things anyway. And I guess I was fortunate enough to recognise the situation that was going on in my head and have the discussion about I guess increased pressure and expectation that kind of could have easily been heaped on myself, and we kind of managed to diffuse it and go out and perform the skill as best we could, really.
So in terms of like going forwards with Commonwealth Games and things like that will be coming up again for a lot of performers on the Isle of Man, what advice would you give to people who might be going into those scenarios, and in terms of getting into learning about psychological skills? Would you be a massive advocate of that for them?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, if anyone is going to any major event, you need to have a full awareness of, those 4 areas that I worked on, and that was technical, tactical, physical, and mental. And, mental is huge in terms of planning and preparation, just to make sure that you don't walk into, an unknown situation and then fail because of it, because the planning and preparation is the easy part, really. Everyone can make a plan and expectations and have coping strategies in place, based on what might happen or what might occur. I mean, that's kind of easy stuff, isn't it? It's easy to do, whereas everyone wants to go on the training round and play their sport or replicate it as much as they can, because that's the fun stuff, and the boring stuff is not as exciting, is it? But it's the boring stuff that matters, to be fair. It's the unseen hours at home, sat making notes and analysing performance and thinking about what's going to happen. That's the stuff that makes a difference. Because, and if there's 2 of you there that are competing and training, and one's doing really well and one isn't, and you're both putting the same amount of effort in on the training round, someone's doing something else at home, aren't they? And you've got to think, what is that? Whether that's better sleep or nutrition or rest or recovery, or they're just better at planning and putting less pressure on themselves, then you've got to be kind of thinking, okay, what else do I need in my toolbox?
Yeah. That's something you've been very good at. I've noticed from the interactions I've had with you over the years, Tim, is you sort of leave no stone unturned in analysing performance and looking at what's going to give you that extra edge. I think that's probably what separates the people who experience success and those who don't.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it depends how much you want it, doesn't it, and how hard you're willing to work for it. Shooting. I felt that I was never somebody that was a gifted shooter or someone that had natural talent per se, because I don't really believe you have natural talent. I think everything's anyone can go and replicate a skill to a certain degree, and be very good at it as long as you put the work in. When I first went to secondary school, I was the fattest kid in the class. Yeah, I became an Olympic athlete. So, I think a lot of hard work, focus, and determination, you can anyone can achieve a lot. And I guess, like I say, just having that focus and attention to detail and trying to work out what's going to give you that bit of edge, and it makes a huge difference. And also taking on criticism, taking on what other people say. I know that year 2014, I'd shot the world record, and the gun that I had was very different to other people's guns, mainly because I couldn't afford a better one, to be honest. And we were at the World Finals, and the American coach was there, and we were in the bar afterwards, and after the event had finished in Azerbaijan, it was in Gabala, and one of the American coaches had had a few whiskeys and was, he was typical Texas kind of American, getting a bit loud in the bar, and he comes over to me and he kind of says, Tim, you're I don't care, you shot the world record, I don't care this, that, the other, but your technique is shit. It is terrible. That's what he said to me. He said, if you want to be better, you have got to change everything you're doing with that gun. You've got to get rid of it, get a different one, and change your technique. And I did, and then off the back of that, went out and got the quota place to the Olympic Games, and then made the final and things like that. And I guess he was probably right, to be fair, by having the the change, you know, it allowed me to be more analytical of what I was doing and have more control over the process, which was great. But sometimes, you know, a lot of people would have said, well, you know, I'm the world record holder, you know, I don't need to listen to what this guy's got to say. But actually, when you stop and think and kind of, you know, break it down, it's, you know, it did make a lot of sense. And it was great that the guy, you know, actually come and said that to me. But, you know, the Americans were very good. They would often come and help out as much as they could. And there was great, you know, comradeship within the double trap, the double trap fraternity, I guess.
That's good. That's great to see. You know, that's what makes sport really fantastic sometimes, isn't it? It's the relationships that you make along the way with people, as well as the successes and the failures. It's about that sort of bigger community, isn't it? And sort of makes sports so much fun as well, for sure. So, Tim, we've been going there for nearly an hour now, so probably best close thing. So, I mean, what's life looking like for you at the moment in lockdown? How are you getting on now, and what are you up to professionally?
So now I work for a company down here in the south. Well, it's a global company actually, but I'm based in the southwest of England as an animal nutritionist. So I guess previously as a agricultural consultant, it's kind of fairly similar to what I was doing before, but now dealing with a lot of you know, dairy and beef farmers, doing a lot of helping them just get better results, better performances, improve the kind of feed efficiency on farm, which is kind of helping margins and also reducing kind of I suppose environmental losses and contamination, I suppose, really. So yeah, it's an enjoyable job working with farmers and just helping them improve their businesses and their farming systems, and also kind of benefiting the environment as well by making them more efficient, hopefully. So yeah, excellent. It's a good job. It's a bit of a change from being out on the range shooting in you know, in Italy or something like that. But yeah, it's new challenges and yeah, a new chapter in my life, I suppose.
Excellent. Do you still have the gun in a case? You to get it out for a shoot every now and again, or?
Yeah, no, I've not had it out since Commonwealth Games. So yeah, I've not really missed going and shooting double trap, if I'm honest, or Olympic trap either. It's been, yeah, I've kind of missed the competition element, I suppose, and the kind of you know, the travel and the kind of competing with your friends and against the rest of the world. But I don't really miss the training and the kind of the mental torture at times, to get yourself in the right position. And plus, it's always, you know, nice to be able to just go and have a few beers now and again and not feel guilty about it. So.
Excellent. Well, you make sure you enjoy those beers, mate, because they're well deserved, for sure. Absolutely well deserved. But really, thank you for giving up your time to come and speak to us on the podcast, Tim. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to get this out for people to listen to, and you know, I'll send it on to yourself as well, and share it out amongst your shooting buddies as well, so we can get people out there listening to your story. So, any closing comments before we finish? Are we all good there, Tim?
Yeah, no, all good. Thanks, Trev. Yeah, just good to speak to you and catch up again, and yeah.
Excellent. Well, we can't wait for you for the lockdown to close. It'll be great to see you in person, back on the Isle of Man again at some point in the future as well, mate.
Yeah, that's it. Hopefully get over and catch up with some friends and all the family soon.
Excellent. Well, you take care, and I will see you again soon. Take care, Tim.
All right. Cheers, Trevor. Thanks, Sam.